Well, welcome again to our weekly edition of Art Brunch, a production of Whamma Art Asylum, the place to explore the wisdom of the arts, spirituality, and the great ideas, and find greater meaning and mission for one's life. As last week, on occasion, this Art Brunch receives sponsorship, and I want to recognize my sponsor for this week, Alexi Photo. Alexi has been helping people look their very best by capturing dramatic and I'd say powerful portraits. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like having my picture taken. I hate it. But Alexi made it fun and the time flew by and I got a great portrait. Actually, I got several great portraits. Here's an example of one. Look at me. Don't I look intelligent and sophisticated? So Alexi can really pull off miracles. So anyway, if you are interested in a fantastic portrait at an incredible price, look up alexiphoto.com. And if you're in the Front Range area, he'll be glad to help you look great as well. All right, on to our presentation, the Indigenous American Perspective. This one actually is about the sacredness of animals, but really it's about animism. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. So we're most likely aware that the indigenous peoples of America have traditionally had a close affinity with nature, including the animal kingdom, at least closer than we have traditionally had if we come from the West, particularly a European context. Now, I don't think I'm going to be accused of being overly woke on this, not too controversial, but in the West, our understanding of our relationship with the natural world has led to more exploitive interactions with nature and its wildlife than indigenous populations. What is the nature of our relationship to nature? There is the belief for much of history that the word of the divine in Genesis 1:28 towards the first man and woman was to use nature however fit. Well, here are the actual words. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, this command to subdue and have dominion seems to set human beings as separate from nature and actually set them over and against nature. At least traditionally in the West, it has been understood that way. However, before we bash the Judeo-Christian tradition too heavily, there were far more scriptural passages admonishing humans to treat animals respectfully, including the fact that up until Noah's flood, you've heard of Noah's flood, right? Humans were not permitted to eat animals. I'm always astonished that more people don't know that Adam and Eve and their immediate descendants were vegetarians. Let's look at more of the legacy of the West when it comes to our relationship with nature. In the classical Greek world, there were two main views. Pythagoras, the mathematician and the philosopher and the mystic, he argued for animism. Animism comes from the Greek word anima, which means breath or soul. This view argues that all things in nature possess a soul and therefore are worthy of the same respect as any other creature, including humans. Now, Pythagoras' view did not ultimately win the minds of the average Greek. This man's view did. Aristotle believed plants are created for the sake of animals and animals for the sake of men. Though he believed the differences in temperament between plant and animal and human was one of degree, he still believed that the rational superiority of humans allowed humans to use animals and plants as he or she deemed necessary. And we kind of know where that's leading. Now, the Romans were perhaps the most brutal and exploitive in their relationship with the natural world. They used the wounding of animals for human entertainment. Eating meat was a sign of status, and animals were often cooked alive, no consideration for the pain they experienced. So these two traditions, the Judeo-Christian and the classical Greco-Roman world, have been the basis for the Western understanding of the relationship between the human and the natural world. Indigenous Americans sided with Pythagoras for the most part. They were animists, though they, of course, derived their animism from their daily interaction with the natural world. Their wisdom about the earth and its creatures came from intimate and daily relationship with it. They have an especially kindred relationship with certain plants and animals. They talk of Mother Earth and Father Sun and the three sisters of corn, bean, and squash. But Native Americans also refer to animals as their brothers and sisters and their father and mother. They say things like grandmother turtle and father bear, or brother bear even. Each tribe usually has animals they're closer to than others. And I would like to look at some of the Native people's favorite animals, just a few of them. Some important animals for indigenous peoples of America are the turtle, the bear, and the bison. So let's briefly touch on each one. I will begin with a seemingly meek and mild animal, the turtle. Most of us listening to this presentation live on Turtle Island. I don't know if you knew that. Turtle Island is North America. Now, how did the Native peoples come to live on Turtle Island? Well, here's the creation myth of the Iroquois. Here is the story is depicted by an artist from the Seneca people. The great mother in the sky fell from the heavens towards the earth, but she was saved by geese who gently placed her on the back of a turtle. The turtle, with the help of a muskrat, succeeded in raising up earth from the bottom of the ocean and placing it on the back of the turtle so that the sky mother would have a piece of earth, would have land to live on. But the muskrat kept diving deep and kept piling dirt on the turtle until there was a small island on its back. And more dirt kept getting added to the back of the turtle while the turtle kept growing in size to accommodate the dirt. And eventually there was a great island where the native peoples who came from the sky mother could live. That is their story. And so foundationally, they have a very strong relationship with the earth and a very special place the turtle has in that idea of Mother Earth. For the Navajo, or the Dine as they refer to themselves, the turtle has strong healing energy. And so medicine is dispensed only with a turtle shell. Lakota mothers make little leather amulets for their newborns in the shape of turtles. And inside the amulet, they put a piece of the umbilical cord, in this leather amulet so that the child always has with it that physical representation of the connection between the child and the mother. So the turtle is a strong symbol of all of our connection to Mother Earth and to the first mother. Well, let's turn to the bear. Those of you who live near Denver are familiar with our famous blue bear. In Native American cultures, bears are symbols of wisdom and courage and strength, among other things. The bear is a leader, strong, a protector. The bear is a teacher, as are many animals. The bear goes beneath the earth in winter and is symbolically reborn in the spring. The artist Annie Dowdell, in her artist statement from her website, Worlds Unseen, begins by comparing the bear to Christ. She compares the bear to Christ. There's a creed that many church communities recite each Sunday, which is called the Apostles' Creed, and it has a line about Christ that goes, "He was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended into hell, aka the underworld. The third day he rose again from the dead and ascended into heaven." Now, many Western folk who consider themselves intelligent and educated scoff at the claims of this creed. But the pattern it describes for Christ, who is the ideal of our highest self, after all, is also the pattern of the bear and of many sentient beings and even plant life. The bear goes into the earth the underworld, if you want to call it that, for several months before it reemerges in the spring, born anew. Whether one can accept the Apostles' Creed as conveying actual historical events or simply as conveying psychological and spiritual phenomena, the ideas and the bear represent are universal. The bear teaches us to accept this pattern of life, death, and life, rather than trying to resist it. Here's a wonderful image of the bison by an artist friend of mine as well, Jennifer Johnson. More than any other creature, I believe, the Lakota people, the people of the central United States, honor and revere what they call, and hopefully I'll pronounce this correctly, the Tatanka, which is the bison. When the Lakota kill a bison, they use every single bit of the animal, every single bit of the animal. Here's a wonderful chart of the many, many uses the Native American peoples made of the bison. Of course, they use its meat, but they also use its muscles to create bows and arrows and cinches and thread. They use its brains for hide preparation, its horns for cups and ladles. They use the skull for prayer ceremonies. They eat the tongue, actually. They believe it's the best part of the meat. Then they use the beard for ornaments, hair for headdresses and clothing and pillows and all that sort of thing, and the stomach for buckets and cups. You get the idea. They use every single piece of it. For this reason, the bison represents extreme self-sacrifice for the well-being of others. And in this way, it's a symbol of the divine. For the bison is literally a feast for the people, offering all of itself. So the Lakota always give prayers of thanks to the bison and pray for the health of the bison. They honor the bison as they would honor the elders of their tribe and their deceased ancestors. So can you imagine how the Lakota must have felt when they saw travelers shooting at the bison from train windows for sport, like they were playing a video game? The dead carcass was just left on the plains to rot. This quote comes from Harper's Weekly. Nearly every railroad train which leaves or arrives at Fort Hays on the Kansas Pacific Railroad has its race with these herds of buffalo. And a most interesting and exciting scene is the result. The train is slowed to the rate of speed about equal to that of the herd. The passengers get out firearms, which are provided for the defense of the train against the Indians, and open from the windows and platforms of the cars a fire that resembles a brisk skirmish. Frequently, a young bull will turn at bay for a moment. His exhibition of courage is generally his death warrant, for the whole fire of the train is turned upon him, either killing him or some member of the herd in his immediate vicinity. There was another reason the bison were hunted almost to extinction. It was part of a military strategy against Native peoples. You see, cut off their supply chain, their food, their clothing, everything, and you literally starve the enemy. But the bison were also the spirit of these Native peoples who lived on the plains, containing the soul of their God and of themselves, perhaps even the soul of ancestors. Like all of us, contain the image or spirit of our Creator as well. So killing their bison was like killing their soul. How many of you have pets? A dog or cat? You probably sense that the pet is more than simply an animal, that it has personality. and a distinct character. It has feelings. It can even love. When you look into your pet's eyes, do you also experience its spirit, its soul? Native people saw a soul in the bison, and they saw it in all creatures. I'd like to turn from animals to plants. Now, many of us might have been able to make the psychological and moral leap to seeing animals possessing a soul, but plants, things are going to get a little weird before they get clear. There is now scientific evidence that plants participate in functions usually thought only possible if you had a brain, such as communication and learning and memory. This quote comes from the wonderful site ambius.com. I encourage you to check that site out. There is a growing body of evidence that suggests that plants, trees in particular, can communicate with one another. This communication occurs through underground mycorrhizal networks, or cobweb-like networks of mushroom mycelial growth that grows around the root structures of trees. These mycorrhizal networks have affectionately been dubbed, and get ready to smirk, the wood wide web. And scientists hypothesize that they can be used for anything from nutrient transportation to signaling that a potential threat, such as a caterpillar, is nearby. Essentially, these mycorrhizal networks are creating an internet-like communication network between trees. These networks may even allow an entire forest to communicate. Now, there is no ecosystem without fungi, the ones who create that mycelial network, which allows communication. Fungi are interesting. They are not quite a plant, and they are not quite an animal, but they serve to connect all plant and animal systems, even make them possible. Without fungi, there would be no ecosystem. Now, can plants learn from experience? Can they learn from experience? Like Pavlov's dogs, can they be conditioned to respond a certain way based on environment stimuli? Can plants actually learn? Well, a research team from Western Australia University designed an interesting experiment to test pea plants' ability to learn based on a stimulus and reward system. They began by conditioning the plants to associate the breeze from a fan, which was the stimulus, associate the breeze from a fan with light. As you know, light is food for plants. Each day, the team would turn on the fan at the same time they turned on the lights. This created an association with the plants that the fan's breeze means food is coming. Within 4 days, researchers were 100% successful in teaching the plants to respond to the fan without turning on the lights. This means that the plants leaned towards the fan when they felt the breeze without the lights having been turned on. The stimulus alone was enough to cause a response, just as Pavlov was able to teach his dogs to salivate to the ringing of a bell without providing food, thus discovering classical conditioning. The goal of the experiment was to prove whether plants could learn through experience, an idea that seemed implausible. Ultimately, the researchers succeeded in not only their experiment, but also in proving that plants can actually learn. Now, it naturally follows from such experiments that plants have memory. That is something normally associated with having a brain. Even more amazing is that plants can learn quickly in as little as 1 day. Also known as the touch-me-not or sensitive plant, the Mimosa poetica curls its leaves inward, when it is touched or otherwise senses a threat, such as when grazing animals are nearby. This is kind of a way of disguising itself. Despite its lack of a brain and nervous system, the mimosa pudica displays learned responses in as little as 1 day. An experiment was conducted to test whether the touch-me-not could learn adaptive behavior from its environment and how quickly it could learn. The experiment was conducted by dropping the mimosa plant 60 times, dropping it 60 times at 5-second intervals using a custom-built elevator-like system, resulting in the plant's unique folding reflex. See, when it fell, it felt it was under threat, so its leaves would clamp shut. After dropping 60 times, the plant stopped folding its leaves. It was as if it knew that the drop would cause it no harm. The experiment included 56 different mimosa plants, most of which exhibited a learned response to stop curling their leaves. In essence, the plant was able to memorize the fall and the outcome. It learned that it no longer needed to curl or fold its leaves in response to the action. Now, I know people who talk to their plants and truly believe it has an effect. And there are many experiments suggesting that plants and fungi particularly respond to sound. Native peoples of the Americas have long beat drums and sung songs to the natural world. Might they know something we don't? Or possess a wisdom about the world we only just now are confirming through science? The earth is alive in a way that we are not always aware of. And thus we are not aware of our intimate relationship to that life. We are not aware of our interconnectedness to the natural world. Fungi have neural pathways that stretch far and wide underneath the ground surface that we cannot see. They are a living being, which has the function of what we would call a mind. It facilitates communication between all of the plant life in a forest. I'd like to close with a Zuni prayer song. It goes like this, or at least a portion of it. That our earth mother may wrap herself in a fourfold robe of white meal. When our earth mother is replete with living waters, when spring comes, the source of our flesh, all the different kinds of corn we shall lay to rest in the ground with the earth mother's living waters. They will be made into new beings, coming out, standing into the daylight of their Son, Father. To all sides, they will stretch out their hands. And so the Mother Earth, a living being, waters are living beings, and the sun is a living being to the Zuni and other native peoples. Humans, understandably, know only what they know. That is, we know our own experience and not that of other creatures. So we make a vast assumption that our experience and ways of communicating and knowing our world are the highest form and most valuable way of experiencing the world. But other life forms have their own means of intelligence that may exceed human capabilities. Other life forms have languages that communicate, perhaps more effectively even than our own. Is that so hard to accept? That perhaps people who have lived more intimately with these other life forms may have an awareness of the intelligence of this world that we who are from traditional Western cultures might benefit from knowing more about. Friends, animism seemed complete superstition for most of my adult life. It doesn't seem so far-fetched to me anymore. What about you?